Hi guys, today is the 23rd of October 2020 and it's 7 minutes past 7 in the evening over here in the UK. I wanted to make this quick video about October the 31st and November the 5th. Quickly, I just want to say where I see the number 31, and I'm going to try and explain my interpretation pattern as best as I can. So there's potentially the number 31 in the back of this shark here, with the number 3 coming down the back, the number 1 coming off of it. As I was doing this, I was kind of seeing that there might be a reference to New York City in the acronym of NYC, where you take the mouth, which is the number 2, but it's also an N if you follow it down here, just a standard lowercase n. And then if you follow the tail to the tip here and back to the tail and follow it to the tip here, you've got the Y sideways. And then if you follow from the tail round here in sort of a artistic style of a C, you've got there. So I think maybe, possibly, it could be a reference to New York City, and the shark reference we think of as a submarine. So keeping an eye out around there. At the moment, there is a hurricane Epsilon, which is the fifth named Greek hurricane, Greek alphabet hurricane of this season, and it's kind of just sitting off New York City, off the coast of New York. It's not going to be coming inland, but obviously the thoughts when we were first interpreting this video is that the hurricane is used as a cover for submarine movement, and at whatever predestined time, those submarines or submarine would then launch an attack on its predetermined destination, possibly Florida, possibly New York, even Maine, I've looked at as well. Up here in the missile slash penis urinating or ejaculating, we see potentially the number 3 here. There's also a C and a U making up the L and the T for the word cult. But looking at his number 3, you potentially have the 3 and the 1 there. And then what you're left with is a potential reference to the letter A. Now, I'm thinking of that as maybe referring to the month of August, as we hear George Bush saying backwards, but taking it onto the Roman calendar. So the 8th month of the Gregorian calendar, which is August, looking at it on the Roman calendar, which is October, the month that we're currently in. And obviously, there's all these references in the political universe to an October surprise, and there's been a reference to North Korea delivering some sort of October surprise. So there's lots of opportunity in the language that the world is using for something like this to happen. And obviously, we've had talks of peace and safety with the Middle East and stuff like that. So, you know, if we're following a biblical route, sudden destruction is to be looked out for. So that's just in this one scene. I see 31 here, 31 here, and I'm going to be talking about 31 in reference to October in this video. In this next scene, another potentially clear reference is a 3 over here and a 1 here. Again, there's a potential reference to New York with the N in the flame just here and the Y right in the middle just here. I also get Maine from this as well, including the house as a reference to the letter A. I've got M on the side here, the letter A in the house, the letter I up here, the letter N over here, and the letter E backwards. But mainly focusing on date in this video, although I do want to remind people that the house is a potential reference to Congress, potentially something happening there, whether physically or metaphorically. We'll have to keep an eye out around the 31st or potentially even the 30th if that gap in the middle is a reference to a 0 rather than like a bubble right in 1. Couldn't find the word there for a second. We've also got the fact that it looks like a nuclear missile and it's on fire. And we also have the fact that it looks like the shape of a boat from bird's eye view. And we've got that reference to the US aircraft carriers, particularly in the Middle East. But I'm also keeping my eye on the South China Sea, as there's been a lot of tensions between China and Taiwan. And obviously, you know, if things kick off with Taiwan, it's likely that the United States and other countries would get involved on the side of Taiwan against China. So something to keep our eyes open for. In this scene here, I'm kind of building a multiple cross video interpretation with different scenes kind of linking together. So I'm thinking in this scene here, we see the Statue of Liberty ripples coming out from the base of it, and then it lights up in a star, which I'm thinking of as sort of like an explosion, an underwater explosion. And that's kind of what you get from the George Bush character, who I think represents Donald Trump in this video as well. He kind of does that with his body, the arms going up, and then his hand, sorry, coming across in a sort of like a tsunami wave motion. And obviously, you've got that reference to the potential nuclear situation. Maybe it's a nuclear bomb. Maybe we've got like an Obama style situation with a bomb going off in Manhattan, that theoretical situation he was speaking of. So all of that seems to be kind of tied in, the tsunami wave coming across. And when you look at this scene, just go back a little bit, you can see that wave coming in. So if the lighting up and the ripples coming from the base of the Statue of Liberty is the suggestion of some sort of nuclear explosion, perhaps underwater or underground, that could be connecting with what George Bush is doing with his body in this scene. And then we've got the tsunami wave coming forward, and again, his hand is kind of doing that wave across, sort of indicating a tsunami motion. And then with the NY reference, New York, you've got there, you can easily take that interpretation from the Statue of Liberty, connecting it with New York. So moving on to the next tab, in this scene again, I'm getting that kind of New York, something bad happening reference, 31. The reason I'm saying 31 is because the girl who's holding the apple, which is a symbol of New York, the Big Apple, she's the 13th child in the room, and I'm simply reversing that number to bring us to 31. And with the emergency exit open in the background, suggesting leave, the red and blue color scheme suggesting emergency services, it kind of indicates that something has happened. You've got the fire in the background. Maybe that's a connection with what we see on the chalkboard with the nuclear missile. Some sort of event involving fire has taken place, perhaps in New York, perhaps in another location, but it just seems heavily focused on New York in these particular scenes. As we move on to the next tab, you can see as the apple splits open, that New York reference. Inside, we've got 3 seeds and one of the spaces is empty. So we've got that 3-1 reference. The 8 in the middle, again, referring us perhaps to the 8th month on the Roman calendar, which is October. So keeping an eye out for something like that. We have the apple splitting in half. And again, that reference to a potential tsunami wave. So with the apple atom kind of reference connecting together, splitting that suggests some sort of nuclear activity. And out of that, we have the lotus flower blooming, which again, in symbolic terms, represents some sort of explosion, and the lotus flower having symbolic meaning to regeneration, death, reincarnation, all of that sort of stuff. So again, keeping an eye out around New York, and I have my mind on London as well, because of all the other references we have to London. Blue and red is also the emergency services for London, connects with our flag. The rose connects with England, the apple connects with England, so that's another place I'm watching. But speaking of New York in this particular video, and speaking of the particular date of the 31st of October, in this scene, we obviously see Osama bin Laden raising up his hands. Again, we've got a fire reference, lots of smoke going around. This could also double up as an interpretation for a rolling over tsunami wave. So I feel like that's connected again. And again, we're on water with this iceberg type thing that these soldiers and Osama bin Laden is on. So again, that kind of maybe references water again. The 31 up in the clouds over here, just looking out on the 31st of October of this month for potential events unfolding in the Middle East. I'll get a little bit more into detail as I go through the tabs, and I'll be flicking back and forth, hopefully successfully without too many mistakes. In this next tab here, I feel like we're also looking at another 31 reference. It seems to have that A31 reference, similar to the missile on the chalkboard with the A3 and the 1. So if I come back to that, you've got the three planes in the shape of A's, and then this plane, this leading plane, shoots out one missile. Whoops, sorry, excuse me. Shoots out one missile. Perhaps you saw it there. So you've got that A31 reference, and again, if the A is referring to August, bringing us to the 8th month of a particular calendar, and we're looking at that on the Roman calendar, then perhaps we're looking at October 31st, which is obviously coming up in about a week's time. I'm going to be coming back to this scene, I think, to try and explain a bit more. This scene again refers me to October 31st, because of the blue moon on October 31st. We will be having a full blue moon. The moon will be located on the opposite side of the Earth as the sun, and its face will be fully illuminated. This phase occurs at 2:51 Universal Time. Since this is the second full moon in the same month, so again, it's that bookending of October, a full moon on October 1st, and then we have another full blue moon, or we have another full moon which is also blue on October 31st. So it seems significant, maybe one of those celestial signs we're told to look out for in the Bible. Draw your own conclusions as you will. But yeah, we seem to be around that kind of time frame. So what do I think is really going to be happening here? So if I've talked about the potential for an event taking place in New York, or Maine, or anywhere around the East Coast involving some sort of nuclear weapon, and perhaps the incoming body of water referred to as a tsunami, maybe that's a terrorist event, or maybe it's blamed or portrayed as a terrorist event. So if that happens, I think the likelihood is that we would then get this scene unfolding afterwards, which would be a retaliation of the event in New York. B-2 bombers dropping a bomb on what appears to be a building connected to a mosque, or some sort of religious site. That event, I think, directly links to this event where we have the boy rising up out of the hole where the missile impacted, and that would suggest some sort of collateral damage. Maybe some innocents have been killed. In this video, we do see the boy and his mother kind of represented as those innocents. And I think if that were to happen, so you've got the New York event, then the retaliation on the mosque or some sort of religious site, perhaps collateral damage, I think then that would lead to this event where the Red Crescent representing the Middle East rising up, or perhaps even representing Turkey, joining up ISIS, Taliban, all of those references kind of coming together maybe under one banner because of this attack in the Middle East, which has taken place, perhaps in retaliation to an attack on New York. All of this is just theory, bear in mind. So I'm just thinking, if this was to then happen, the rising up, I don't think a retaliation would be instant, say on the same day, because if there was, death in the Middle East, large-scale death, the practice is to observe days of mourning, and then, there would be talk or perhaps action in the form of retaliation. And I think that then leads us to what we see in this scene, where perhaps 5 days later, on November 5th, we have that retaliation coming out. We remember that this shape here is the top of a submarine coming up out of the water. And I remember in reports in this year, Iran unveiled a new submarine as one of their weapons in their arsenal for their military. And obviously, North Korea has also been in the news with a submarine they've been working on, and obviously they have a new ICBM, which again could be linked to the missile on the board here. Perhaps we have something happening on the 31st involving North Korea and their ICBM or SLBM if it's launched from a submarine. Again, we have that reference in this video. But we see that perhaps this is what happens. We get some form of retaliation, some activity, because we have that submarine shape. It refers me again to either South China Sea around that area, North Korea sort of around that area, and the Strait of Hormuz with Iran. So those two those two players featuring quite heavily in this whole escalation to what would perhaps be World War III. If nukes have been set off, then there's a high chance that it will be leading to an event like that. And this is already with all the depopulation talk with coronavirus and everything. It just seems like if this were to happen, it would be depopulation on steroids. So, just bear in mind these are all interpretations. But again, if that scene refers to November 5th with the 5 missiles coming out, I believe that the 5 missiles that are fired out of that submarine structure or the blown up mosque are shown here on the Korean Peninsula or the Asian Peninsula. Sorry, not Korean Peninsula, Asian Peninsula. With these 5 fireworks in the background. Again, UK would be fireworks night, Guy Fawkes night, the rhyme of remember, the 5th of November, the gunpowder, treason, and plot. And while that may connect to the start of, World War III and stuff like that, I feel that also may be connected to Donald Trump and, the event I've talked about a lot with Donald Trump. I've often looked at this combination of shapes for George Bush's eyebrow as a date reference, and I see the number 2, I see the number 5, the number 7 backwards, or perhaps even the letter L upside down. But in more recent interpretations, I'm seeing a very fine line going across here, which kind of makes me think maybe this is a 1, and this is a 1, and this is a 5, and that would bring me to November 5th. Obviously, that would be 2 days after the election. Reinforced with that, I see the 11-5 repeated in his hair up here, and this character with the crater on his head, which I think represents the event that I talk about with Donald Trump. He's also got the 11 and the 5 behind his head, with that flower representing kind of death used at funerals and stuff like that. The 11, the 1 in the middle, being part of the 11 and being part of the 5, having that dual purpose. So, yeah, I think I've talked a lot about what I wanted to say, and I basically got the gist of everything out. The other thing I kind of looked at to see if maybe this interpretation could be possible is in this scene, if I'm thinking, that the skeleton itself in the foreground, has a connection with Halloween and perhaps October 31st, and then in the background you've got the 5 fireworks referring to 5 days later, fireworks night. Obviously there's lots of events that they use fireworks for, but the 5 fireworks, that specific number, kind of just instantly connects me to November 5th, fireworks night. It's literally the night of fireworks. So if that's the case, and the skeleton gives you a connection to October 31st, you've got this swirling pattern on the chin of the skeleton, which I think is a hurricane, but would be a typhoon if this is, referring to the Asian Peninsula. There is a typhoon on the 31st, at least there is at this moment in time. This is a very early projection, so it very well could change. There could be no no typhoon there at all as the model develops. But at the moment, it's showing a typhoon there. So a couple of things are tying up in the real world, kind of showing perhaps the interpretation might be correct. Maybe the events aren't correct. Maybe they're metaphorical, and these explosions are referring to maybe political explosions or explosions in the news, something like that. But just in case it is a literal interpretation, I want to put the warning out there to say be careful on October 31st. There's potential for catastrophic events taking place. Interpretations would say look at in the UK and look at on the East Coast specifically of the United States, New York and Maine, perhaps even Florida tied in there. And if anything does or doesn't happen on October the 31st, still look out on November 5th for this event, perhaps with Donald Trump. If nothing has happened on the 31st in the Middle East, then there'll be no reason to look out for retaliation from the Middle East on November 5th as well. But, definitely you would still look out for the event with Donald Trump. And then maybe things happen organically. Maybe it doesn't evolve from tit for tat retaliations. Maybe if something happens to Donald Trump, other actors press their advantage and we just have it happen that way. But either way, we're keeping an eye out. It's a very volatile and important time, especially in the United States with the elections going on. A lot of anxiety, I think, is really the only word to describe it. I would suggest people make plans for either or options, because right now it doesn't seem like the government really is doing anything to help anybody, and everyone's just going to have to help themselves as far as they can. But, at the end of the day, they're going to need to be held accountable, and we, the people, are the ones who are going to have to do it. You guys have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and may the Heavenly Father bless you.